Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you made it. It's Friday morning or Friday evening, depending on when you watch the show. But we've made it to the weekend, and I'm sad to report that I won't be going fishing after the show. The boat that I normally go on every weekend is in dry dock for about 6 weeks. So my wife is stuck with me at home, and I got to figure out what to do, because most of the time my weekends, if you've been watching the show at any length of time, you know I'm a fish whisperer and an old salty dog, and I'm landlocked for these next few weekends, and that's going to be a tough one. But we got a great show for you today. We're going to start with the NFL. The NFL started officially last night. The Houston Texans were at the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was televised. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened there, certainly the pregame and everything else. I got to tell you, I didn't watch it. I don't even know who won the game. I think it was Kansas City, but I don't know for sure, and it doesn't matter to me. And I'll get into some of that in just a moment. And then we got an article that we first broached the other day, but didn't have time to get into it. And that is about the upcoming debates or debate. The very first debate is only a couple of weeks away. Imagine that. And there's an opinion piece in the publication, The Hill, that basically says that you better tune into the first debate because there may not be a second or third. And we'll get into the reasons of that. And if we have time, a story I also tried to get to earlier in the week, just to kind of show you how crazy things have gotten. The Oscars have gone wild. To win an Oscar really has very little to do with the quality of the movie you make, but whether you're truly woke enough, and hopefully we'll have time to explain that. But before we go any further, today is obviously a very significant day. It is 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11, when the Twin Towers got hit, the Pentagon got hit, and of course those Patriots took down that plane in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to play we're not going to spend a lot of time on it because I know you'll hear tons about it today probably, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about my thoughts on it. But we're going to start with a very short video. I got to tell you, if some of you out there haven't really seen this, but many of you have, this is a video that essentially shows the second plane crashing into the building, and it's heartbreaking, really, and we'll talk about it. Let's play it. Wow. I mean, that was in slow motion, and man, what a dramatic effect. I remember when that happened like it was yesterday. I was coming off a midnight shift working at a drug treatment center I used to work at, home and just in time, and I went to bed and was pretty much asleep when my wife came in there and told me, said, something's going on you might want to watch. And so I turned on the TV, and I'm pretty sure it was probably CNN. And I was watching, and I'm like, and I have a strong connection to New York and been in the Twin Towers many, many times. And I used to work up there. I used to come up inside the basement riding the PATH train of came up into Twin Towers every morning because I worked mostly in Wall Street area. And I looked at that first one, and then right about the time I within a couple of minutes of starting it is when the second plane hit. So I actually saw that live. And then, of course, everybody knew at that point it wasn't an accident. And I remember watching it all day long. We should never forget, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. pay my respects to the people, especially the people that ran back into the building to save people, our first responders, our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics that ran into the building, into the flames, so to speak, and into pretty much certain death to rescue people. About it. If you really look at it, and this is what I want to talk about a couple of minutes, then we'll move on with the show. What have we learned from that? You know, there's a lot of different things. Obviously, we were under threat at that time from Muslim extremist terrorists. They were behind that, Islamic fundamentalists behind the whole deal. But what has happened since then? Well, we've had terrorist attacks around the world. We've certainly had seasons of them in the summer of terror. I remember during the Obama administration, I was fishing every single day, basically, and coming back periodically offshore. And it seemed like every time that I came back, there was a new terrorist attack, like the one in Orlando, the shooting there and everything. So there was a lot of domestic terrorism. You know what has happened in the last 4 years that's very interesting? We haven't really had that, have we? We really haven't had a lot of those types of attacks, if any, during the Trump administration. And terrorism seems to be somewhat under control, Muslim terrorists. And I think Donald Trump actually deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that, but gets almost no credit for that. And I think he deserves it. I think you can make a case. When you look at where ISIS was when he first took over, you know, now we're actually bringing some troops home, pretty much contained. And I think part of the reason is not because Donald Trump just freewheelingly used the military. He is very tactical with how he does it. And I think that strike that first kind of let everybody know that there was a new sheriff in town was when in Afghanistan, and I don't know how actually effective it was, but a lot of people don't remember this, but early in the Trump administration, there was a Taliban terrorist attack in Afghanistan where some of our guys got killed. And what did President Trump do? Mother of all bombs is the slang term for it. The most aggressive or tremendous missile we have that is not nuclear on them in Afghanistan. I think the first time it had been used in combat. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. And I think that Donald Trump sent a message that, hey, if you it goes back to his deal as kind of a street fighter, if you will, in New York City. You hit me once, I'm going to hit you twice, and twice as hard where it hurts. And I think Donald Trump proved early on that if you mess with America, you're going to pay one heck of a price. And I actually believe that that is one of the main reasons why we have somewhat peace in the waking up and having coffee. But I don't expect Donald Trump to get it. But I think as we remember 9/11 today, take a look at where we were over the years and where we are at now. And I believe that Donald Trump has done more to make us safe from Muslim extremist terrorists in the last 4 years than all the rest of the presidents combined. That's just the way I see it. Anyway, let's move along. All right, we're going to start out with a story about the NFL. It started last night. I got to tell you, I was torn. I not watch it, but I kept trying to make up excuses for watching it. In other words, I need to watch it to see what actually happens. I need to watch it to bring it to you on the show. And I find, because I'm a huge football fan, man. I love the NFL. I love college football. I'm a general, especially football, and to a certain extent basketball. I'm a huge fan. So I missed not watching the NFL, but I did not watch it. And I'm not planning to watch it. Matter of fact, I'm planning to cancel my sports package in general. But I did watch some of the coverage of it this morning and some of the events that happened pregame, and very interesting, and I think we should get into it. This is an article from Chiefs Fans Boo Players Show of Unity. And why they say Chiefs fans, actually at the Chiefs, there are a limited number of people there think only 17,000 people were allowed to come into the stadium. So I'm assuming there were virtually no Texan fans. 72, somewhere along in their 1,000. So it's a pretty big place by packed to the rack. There are only 7,000, but apparently they booed. And we're going to get into potentially why and what happened. Kansas City Chiefs fans booed the reigning Super Bowl champions and the Houston Texans to lined up for a moment of unity ahead of Thursday's NFL season opener at Arrowhead Stadium. Now, I want to play you a clip that you'll hear the fans booing. And keep in mind, this is only 17,000 people, and it's fairly loud considering how 17,000 in a stadium 2,000. So a significant number of those 17,000 booed fairly. Trump 2020, which I thought was interesting. But I was listening to some news reports this morning about it and some pundits talking about it on my way into the show. And there were a couple of them, they were kind of perplexed as to why the fans booed, because at that point, as you saw, they were locking arms there. They weren't kneeling. They'd already, I believe, played the Star Spangled Banner and the Black National Anthem, which we'll get into all that in just a moment. So they were speculating as to why exactly were they booing, and if they were, going to boo, why would they even come to the game? Well, I think that they were booing. This is just my opinion based on, my observations. I think what they were booing was politics in general being injected into sports, into the NFL. And a rendition. Well, the first thing that I'm not Star Spangled Banner. That's it. We don't play, because to get into this whole thing, this is not a criticism, not a denial of racism. It is that there is only one national anthem. I mean, Irish people were, they were mistreated, almost enslaved, basically. Chinese were literally enslaved, especially on the West Coast. Are we going to play that? Are we Native American anthem? You can for that. Native Americans were made by people of all colors. So, to me, I don't understand it. I understand what basically it, and they're trying to be woke. But to me, the flag, these are symbols that are supposed to unify all of us. It doesn't forgive atrocities. It doesn't mean that we're a perfect nation, but we're striving for that. It's about the ideal we're striving for and hopefully the results. But there are a couple of things that are supposed to unify. Thinking about that even because we were fairly after we were all attacked. That's one thing about the attacks on the World Trade Center. Didn't matter where you were dead if you trapped in those towers. And people of every race didn't care what color your skin was or anything. if you were an American, they were trying to kill you. That's just the way it was. I mean, that's simple as that. So, there's only one national anthem. The Texan players remained in their locker room for both anthems while the Chiefs players stood on the field. One Chiefs player, defensive end, dropped to one knee during the playing of the U.S. national anthem. Now, let me just state this, okay? I hadn't talked about this in a while, but kneeling for the national anthem is disrespectful of the national anthem, of the flag, and everything it stands for. Period. Now, am I saying that every single person that kneels thinks that when they're doing it? No, I'm not saying that. But make no doubt about it, it is disrespectful to everything that the national '49ers in 2017. Now, I touched on this just the other day, and I kind of went fast through it, so I want to slow down a minute and make a point of why Colin Kaepernick is not in the NFL. And this is probably going to offend some people. And let me just say, because I'm going to talk about Tim Tebow, and nobody's a bigger fan of Tim Tebow than me. I mean, I've met the guy; he's the real deal. But Colin Kaepernick is not playing in the NFL. It's not because he was kneeling, because there are many, many players playing in the NFL right now who have knelt and are still kneeling, right? And of course, he was more controversial at the time, but there were players that were kneeling during that same year with him and other teams, and they're still in the NFL. The reason Colin Kaepernick is not in the NFL is he's simply not good enough to be a first team starter about that, or at least he was. I don't know about right now. But he's got too much baggage. And baggage is both positive and negative. And that's where I bring in Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow he was at the time he was basically let go. He was as good as any second or third team, and in some cases, first team quarterback. There's no question that Tim Tebow was capable of playing in the NFL at some level at quarterback. He certainly could have been a third teamer. Remember, the last job he had was with the Patriots, and he was brought in at that time, statedly so, by Bill Belichick as a potential third string quarterback, because every team basically has three quarterbacks. In my opinion, the reason why Tim Tebow was let go in the NFL and not a member of an NFL now is because of the baggage he brings in, baggage of being an openly Christian and the kneeling and everything else. And hear me out on this. No coach, and go back to Bill Belichick, if you look at the press conferences, now they stated that Tim Tebow was brought in as a third string quarterback, not to replace Tom Brady. And no one in their right mind thought that was going to happen, especially Tim Tebow, I'm sure. But every time they had a preseason press conference, the first question out of the box for Bill Belichick was something about Tim Tebow. Well, I can tell you, no coach worth their salt wants to talk about quarterback. It's just the way it is. So Tebow, for a very positive reason, had an entourage around him and was an interest and a story in and of itself. Now, how does that apply to Kaepernick? Well, if Kaepernick's not good at it, because believe me, if Tim Tebow, if they thought that he could take them to the Super Bowl, they wouldn't care. Same thing with Kaepernick. Is there anybody out there that believes that if Kaepernick could take a team to the Super Bowl again, like he did before, that he wouldn't be in the NFL right now? But no coach about the third string quarterback. I'm just telling you. So they're opposite sides of the same coin. And let me just say this while we're on the thing with Tim Tebow, because and I know the man fairly well. I mean, I've been around him. I've been to events. I've been behind the scenes with him. Well, I wouldn't say we're necessarily friends, but he knows who I am. And Tim Tebow is the real deal. Let me just straighten out a few things for you. Tim Tebow never, ever knelt for the Star Spangled Banner. Never, ever. There's all kind of BS stuff out there. Tim Tebow knelt in private prayer. Now, you could knock whether he should have done that or not. Pre-game, before the anthems were ever played, he always stood with his hand over his heart for the national anthem. Period. And he never made big public statements about kneeling. Never said, I'm kneeling for abortion or any of that kind of stuff. He never did that. That is all nonsense. He knelt in prayer to God. And I guess Jesus is a Christian. That's just the facts. You don't have to like them. They're just the facts. I just thought I'd straighten that out. Anyway, let's move along. The NFL initially opposed Kaepernick's protest with league commissioner Roger Goodell saying players should stand for the national anthem. So initially, the NFL stood up to the kneeling, right? However, months after protests across the United States following the death of George Floyd and the burning and pillaging and burning of our cities that are still going on. When was the last time you actually heard George Floyd's name really mentioned? It's what's happening out there right now in our cities has zero to do with George Floyd. But the United States, following the death of George Floyd during his arrest by police in Minneapolis, in May, the NFL relaxed its rules and said protests would be allowed. And of course, all these sports entities have done the same thing. Essentially, what the NFL did was they caved. They caved to the mob. Goodell has said he now regrets the league's failure, so they basically apologizing, failure to support Kaepernick, and admits that the quarterback's protests had been mischaracterized as unpatriotic. They still don't have him signed to a team, right? Nike, don't feel sorry for the dude. He's got like a $5 million a year deal with Nike, according to the reports I've seen. So Kaepernick's still not good enough to get in the league, and it has nothing to that admits that the quarterback's protests had been mischaracterized as unpatriotic. No, they weren't. They're not mischaracterized. They are unpatriotic. Kaepernick has shown his true colors since the kneeling multiple times. Let's look up the definition of mischaracterized. To characterize someone or something wrongly. So Kaepernick is mischaracterized. How mischaracterized when he wore these socks to a tryout in the NFL? Can you see those? Pictures of police officers as pigs, as hogs, as pigs. Fry them like bacon, basically, might as well be saying. I mean, that's all you really need to know. There are other things where he's wearing like a shirt of Che Guevara and everything, who actually killed people and everything else. So Kaepernick defined himself. He wasn't mischaracterized. He is unpatriotic, and he is opposed to police, not just those in general. He is with the mob. There is no doubt about it, and he's being highly rewarded for that. And the NFL has caved like all the rest of the sports, and I'm not necessarily going to show up and boo. I'm just going to turn it off. Now, I will report from time to time as needed on issues, but I'm not planning on watching any of the games. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. In June, Goodell issued a statement. He's commissioner of the NFL. Goodell's statement followed calls for an apology led by Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who was I think the player of the year and also the MVP of the Super Bowl last year, and a phenomenal player. I'm going to miss watching him. But this idea about Black Lives Matter, of course they do. Of course Black Lives Matter. And of course the NFL, I think, is something about like 70% black. I get that. Black Lives Matter. But, and I say this, and I got a little phrase before I say it, in deference to algorithm, because he's the most important man out there, algorithm. All lives matter, period. All lives matter. Human life matters. BLM is another story, because they don't believe that themselves. They don't even believe, and I'm talking about the actual organization. I'm not talking about Black lives that actually matter. I'm talking about the organization of Black Lives Matter. Not all Black Lives matter. If you're shot in your stroller in Brooklyn, that don't matter. If you're killed in Chicago, little kids and children killed, and adults as well, it doesn't matter. There's no protest there. They don't hold any protests there. They're a political organization that sole purpose is to take down the United States of America. Period. They're a Marxist organization by their own words. That's not my opinion. I'll tell you that they are a Marxist organization. It's just it. The NFL, if there's any apologizing the NFL should be doing, they should be apologizing for supporting a Marxist organization, which is Black Lives Matter. They should be apologizing. All these big corporations in sports leagues should be apologizing to people who had their businesses burned to the ground by Black Lives Matter and Antifa, which are basically joined at the hip. They should be apologizing to the black man who had his son killed in CHOP or whatever the heck it was called in Seattle. They owe him an apology. That's who they should be apologizing to, not to just in general, not to just some kind of blanket thing, but there are specific people who have been hurt and killed. Our cities are on fire right now because of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and the NFL and other organizations are giving them tens of millions, if not billions of dollars. They ought to apologize to the American people for that. It's one thing to cave in and allow protests, but to actually give money to organizations that are trying to bring down the nation, they should apologize for that. They are destroying, the NFL, are eating themselves alive. They're destroying themselves. And this is what the hardcore leftists want. This is what they want. Remember, they've always hated everything to do with the NFL. I mean, they hate the fact, and I'm just stating facts, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to like them. You don't even necessarily have to agree with them, but if you're honest, you should. The NFL represents everything that the left has. First of all, it's all about testosterone, right? It's about machismo. It's about mano a mano, man against man. It is the gladiators of our time. I don't necessarily say that's good. It just is. It represents meritocracy. In other words, only the best rise to the top. It don't matter what your color is. It don't matter where you came from. None of that. It's all about merit, physical prowess, period. And they're paying these guys millions of dollars. It's all about free enterprise. Everything that the left hates about America, the NFL, in a sense, represents. So they've been trying to take the NFL down for a long time. And now they have found a vehicle, and the NFL is complicit in their own demise. That's just how, and all these sports things are the same thing. This season, the NFL has launched a number of initiatives to demonstrate its support for activist campaigning against racial injustice. How about just play ball and create an economy that benefits everybody? I mean, that would be the thing I would say. End zones across the league will bear the words "End Racism," and it takes all of us, while players will be allowed to wear helmet stickers featuring the names of victims of racism. Well, who determines who's a victim of racism? You remember I remember the first time the NFL really kind of got involved in this was back during the Michael Brown deal in Ferguson. And they had the hands up, don't shoot. I remember the Rams, I believe, were still in St. Louis at the time. They came out, I want to say it was Monday night. It's an absolute lie. There is no truth in it whatsoever. In fact, the Michael Brown case has nothing to do with race at all. Keep in mind, Michael Brown had just accosted, if you want to race, a Korean, I believe, certainly an Asian store owner, slapped him upside the head, was wanted on multiple charges, was stopped by the police officer, who, yes, was white, but Michael Brown tried to take the man's pistol from him and was shot in the process of trying to take the gun from the police officer. What do you think would have happened had Michael Brown got possession of that gun? The police officer would have been injured and most likely killed, and probably some other people. And so the whole thing about the Michael Brown thing is a total lie. But the NFL embraced it at the time. So they were showing out. So who determines which is a racist incident? Crazy. But you want to make a difference, the NFL, you want to make a difference, people want to make a difference. You want to make a difference if you're a player out there? How about support the symbols that unify us? How about stop denigrating the very things that are supposed to bring us together? Blood was spilled by black patriots, white patriots, Native American patriots. A rainbow of colors. Blood has been spilled to get us where we are in this country, and the flag. There were many blacks and flag and, charged on with it all the way through history, going back to the Revolutionary War. So this idea, we're not a perfect nation. We're not perfect. You know why? Because we're filled with people. We were founded by human beings, and there's some book out there somewhere that talks about we all fall short of the glory. Maybe part of the problem is we need to rediscover that little old book. But we're not a perfect nation, but we strive for perfect principles. And that's what the flag and the anthem are all about. They're about unifying an imperfect group of people. But we're the best thing going. This experiment we call the United States of America, show me one better. And then take politics out of sports. I'm not naive. I realize that's not going to happen. But as much as we could, because we could all use a release, for God's sakes, right now, of all things. I get the pandemic and what they got to do, but couldn't we use as a people, regardless of our color, something to just get out of the day-to-day grind it is of the country right now? And sports is the perfect thing for that, but they've ruined it. I've had to find other things because I am not going to watch the caving in. The funding, this is what bothers me, and I'll sum it up with this. I've said it earlier, but I want to reemphasize it. The fact that these major corporations, including all these sports entities, are actually giving money to organizations like Black Lives Matter, which is by its own admission, a Marxist organization that I firmly believe, tied in with Antifa, is trying to bring down the country of the United States of America. They don't care about color except bringing down the red, white, and blue, and they're giving them money to do it. I am not knowingly going to support any entity that does that. That's just me. I'm not saying you need to believe that, but that's what I believe. All right, we're going to move along here. We're going to do this story about the debates, and it's a very in the Hill a couple of days ago, and the writer makes a point that you better watch this first debate for multiple reasons, which is only a few weeks away, because he really believes that there may not be a second or third debate depending on how the first one goes. And he makes a pretty compelling case. So let's get into it. This year's first presidential debate means everything because there may not be another. A decisive win would give the victor strong incentive to skip the rest. Interesting. I'm not sure I totally agree, but we'll get into the specifics. This is particularly true for Democratic nominee Joe Biden because it would allow a return to the strategy he was pursuing before the coronavirus. In other words, old Puxatani Biden, Joe Biden could go back to doing just that. He could go back to hiding. And I agree with that. Here's the thing. If Joe Biden does well in the first debate, why would he need a second debate? So if you believe the polling, I'm not saying you do, but if he's already ahead in all this, and here's one of the dangers and concern I have, is that the bar low for Joe Biden. Think about it. He gave the Democratic acceptance speech in the DNC a few weeks back. And if you actually go back and watch the speech, it was a terrible speech. He flubbed every word of it. But of course, the media picked out just the highlights because not that many. That's one thing about the debates that they may not be able to do. Now, they will attempt to do it no matter what. But at least the American people, and I'm hoping it's in the, tens, if not 100 million people watch the dadgum thing, they may actually see the real Joe Biden. But the bar has been set so low for Joe Biden that if he doesn't have a major brain fart in the thing, yeah, that's what I said. Did he may say, hey, I survived. They'll say, oh, well, he survived Trump and everything else. And he may actually have a reason not to have another debate. Been painted, and I think to a certain extent rightfully so, but there is a danger in this that Joe Biden is going to just fall apart during the first debate. But I can tell you, and just because Mike Wallace is actually doing it with Fox News, I don't take any solace in that at all, because Mike Wallace is basically a rhino. He's a classic liberal, really. I'm not saying he's necessarily a hardcore progressive, but he's more in the classic liberal. He's certainly not a MAGA person. He's certainly not an America First person. I don't even think he's really a conservative. If anything, he's more like a never Trumper kind of conservative. I'm not necessarily saying he's a never Trumper, but I don't have any real confidence that he's going to pound it home on Biden. That's going to be up to President Trump. President Trump is going to have to take the fight to Biden, because I don't expect the media, even Fox News, to really do that. So we'll see. This year's first debate is scheduled to take place in Cleveland on September 29th. Like I say, it's just a few weeks away. Chris Wallace of Fox News will moderate, and the debate will consist of 6 15-minute segments on topics of Wallace's choosing. Now, I think he'll pick some pretty good toppings, pizza, right? Each candidate will get 2 minutes to respond to a question from Wallace, after which they will have a chance to respond to each other. Now, the critical thing in this, of course, obviously the banner back and forth between President Trump, can he rattle Joe Biden? But here's the thing where Wallace, it does come in and of importance to anybody who's moderating, because this has not happened to this point. And I've talked about this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. If you watch any questions that Biden has taken, which he hasn't taken many, first of all, they've been scripted, but he hasn't gotten a follow-up question from whoever's asking it. And the follow-up question is the most important part of questioning someone. Why do you think the press with Donald Trump is always trying to shout up some follow-up questions? Because it's the follow-up question that puts the person in the pickle or in the spotlight. It's not their initial response, because you ask a question and most politicians worth their salt will give you the answer, not necessarily even to your question. Sometimes they will totally ignore your question and just get their message out. That's actually takes a very good skill to do. And I'm not knocking it. That's the way politics is done. It's the follow-up question that puts the person on the spot. And Biden has gotten zero follow-up questions. So that's my big question about the moderators, no matter who they are, be it Chris Wallace or someone else. Will they ask a serious follow-up question to Joe Biden? I know they will to President Trump, because they always do. But that's the proof in the pudding about moderating. So ultimately, it's going to come, can President Trump, and he's certainly capable of it, put Joe Biden on the spot enough that Biden gets rattled? If he does, it could be all over. If Biden simply survives in Cleveland, according to the writer here, the liberal chorus clamoring for him to refuse the rest will be deafening. I have no doubt that's true. I mean, they're already saying he shouldn't debate Trump, right? Remember, Pelosi just the other day said they shouldn't. Sporadic calls for him to duck, talking about Biden, all three began some time ago. History and polls tightening have dissuaded him from taking such advice. In other words, the poll numbers, and I probably should play old Don Lemon, back during the, go back and look, I think yesterday's show we played it. Check it out. The best way to check out our podcast, by the way, is go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. Go to our YouTube channel. We're on there every day. Just spell it all the way out. John Martin Talks. We need more views there. We really appreciate you subscribing. You can always look us out through America's Voice News Network. We stream on them live in the mornings on Facebook. Howdy, how are you? Good to see you. Have a great weekend, by the way. But we're also rebroadcast late night along their streaming network, which is like Plato Network, or Pluto. It's not Plato. They get it right. Pluto, because I actually lie. I watch the Addams Family on Pluto, but you can watch John Martin Talks on there. And we're on Dish Network Channel 219, as well as all the streaming services like Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV. Download the free app on Android and iPhone. You can watch our show Voice News, so check them out. But everyone, it says here, will be watching the first debate. All the political spin in the world will be unable to change what the tens of millions see with their own eyes. That is true. That is definitely going to be different, assuming people tune in. And the first debate, I believe, is going to be a big, big media event. Media spin, let me just tell you, media spin for Joe Biden has been over the top. Because if you actually watch Biden talking, like he's been giving some speeches just in the last few days. Oh, and I meant to tell you, I got sidetracked. The reason why, and they're getting back to the strategy of Biden up to this point, the reason he came out of the bunker is because the poll numbers, this goes back to what Don Lemon on CNN said after the DNC, where they didn't mention the violence in our streets at all during the whole week of the DNC, and Biden didn't. And Don Lemon, like I say, go back and look at our show from yesterday. He said that they had to come out because the poll numbers are showing that people are responding to Trump's message of law and order and violence in the streets. Not because of the violence in the streets, but because of the poll numbers have come up. And that is absolutely true. But what the media has been doing, and this takes a little bit of time if you really want to see it, and if you're a snowflake out there that's going to vote for Biden, you really owe it to yourself to do that. Go look at the actual speeches that Biden has given, the actual video. Watch what he's actually saying, and they're incoherent for most parts of it. There'll be snippets where he has moments of clarity, and that's what the media will play. So most people aren't watching these like online things he's been doing from his bunker, or even out in Pennsylvania like the other day. They're not watching it, but they watch MSNBC and CNN and so they get the clips where Biden looks coherent. But if you actually watch what he's saying, he can't keep a thought for more than about 2 minutes. That's it. And so, the debates will likely expose that. If Trump wins the first debate, now they're going to talk about why Trump may not want to have any more debates. If Trump wins the first debate, he could too find excuses to cancel the remainder. And it could be true. He would have the motive of not allowing Biden to redeem himself. If he has a major meltdown, he can't redeem himself. However, there are why he would not do so. I don't see President Trump canceling debates for any reason whatsoever. I could be wrong. I just don't see it. I can see Biden canceling. I think there are two ways that Biden might cancel it. One would be, and I think if he does survive it, if he comes out, and he still has a pulse after the first debate, then why open yourself? And he's still leading in the polls, and the media is fawning all over him. Why risk a second or third debate? I get that. Now, if he totally botches it, he may want to cancel it as well because they'd be asking him whether he could redeem himself versus do further damage. I can see reasons why Biden might cancel. I don't see why Trump would. Back to the story. America will be well advised to watch the first debate at the end of the month because it is the only one guaranteed. I can't argue that at all. If Trump wins, he could cancel the rest. I don't believe that's a chance. If Biden wins or even just survives, expect he would cancel them. And I think there is a reasonable chance of that. It's arguable that no debate in U.S. history has carried more weight before the fact than this one. The anticipation for this debate is huge. There's no doubt about that. If this election, anything with Donald Trump is huge, right? If this election is as momentous as both camps claim, the occurrence of a real campaign over the last month of the race may well depend on it. So we have a choice, ladies and gentlemen. And to me, the choice is pretty clear. I think the choice is between freedom and tyranny. I'm not necessarily saying that Joe Biden is a tyrant. That's not what I'm saying. But he is a Trojan horse, and he's going to bring tyranny with him. And if Progresso world comes, which will be what happens if Joe Biden wins, you're not going to like it. All right, we're about out of time. I just want to bring attention to this NBC News. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I might post it on my Facebook page, but it's really interesting. The Oscars takes place, I think, in 2024, assuming people are still going to movies by then. Nobody's going now. Oscars add diversity requirements for Best Picture contenders, according to NBC News. So what basically is happening, I'll just sum it up really quick, is the Oscars, by 2024, it's not going to be about how good the movie is, how well crafted, what artistic value it has, or even how well it does at the box office, which never seems to be too relevant. But is it inclusionary enough? Does it have an LGBT character in it? Does it properly represent racial context? It's just crazy. And of course, what they never say is, does it appease the Chinese? Because that's the most important thing in moviedom right now. Does it appease the Chinese? The Chinese have their fingers in every little aspect of our life. Well, check it out. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. They're ruining sports. They're ruining the movies. What else can they ruin? I don't know. The country. That's the bottom line. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it and share. I meant to tell you this at the top, but I might as well say it at the bottom. We need help here. We need you to support fighters. Not everybody can be a fighter, but everybody can support fighters like me and Billy Bob. He has a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. But go to the description of our show, no matter which medium you're watching it in. If you look above the video, there's a description to our show. There is a sponsorship link, Big Daddy Unlimited, otherwise known as BDU, for 99-cent free trial, basically virtually free, and then $10 a month after. Cancel at any time. You will have access to factory direct pricing on anything Second Amendment related, from guns and ammo directly to your home to thousands of other products that support that, from tactical gear to swag and everything else. We get a portion of that every month if you do that, and we're going to use all of that money to kick it right back into the show to get the word as far and wide as possible. Thank you again for watching. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Man, we all need to pray for this good old United States.